Section 18 of Little Journeys to the Homes of English Authors. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Jennifer Beckett Wood. Little Journeys to the Homes of English Authors by Elbert Hubbard. Section 18. Benjamin Disraeli, Part 1. The stimulus subsided. The paroxysms ended in prostration. Some took refuge in melancholy, and their eminent chief alternated between a menace and a sigh. As I sat opposite the Treasury bench, the ministers reminded me of those marine landscapes not unusual on the coasts of South America. You behold a range of exhausted volcanoes, not a flame flickers on a single pallid crest. But the situation is still dangerous. There are occasional earthquakes, and ever and anon the dark rumblings of the sea. Speech at Manchester. Since Disraeli was born a Jew, he was received into the Jewish church with Jewish rites. But Judaism, standing in the way of his ambition and his parents' ambition for him, the religion of his fathers was renounced, and he became in name a Christian. Yet to the last his heart was with his people, and the glory of his race was his secret pride. The fine irony of affiliating with a people who worship a Jew as their saviour, but who have legislated against and despised the Jew, this attracted Disraeli. With them he bowed the knee in an adoration they did not feel, and while his lips said the litany, his heart repeated Ben Ezra's prayer. In temperament he belonged with the double-dealing East. He intuitively knew the law of jiu-jitsu, best exemplified by the Japanese, and won often by yielding. He was bold, but not too bold. Israel Zangwill, shrewdest, keenest, and kindliest of Jews, with the tragedy of his race pictured on his furrowed face, a face like an ancient weather-worn statue on whose countenance grief has petrified, has summed up the character of Disraeli as no other man ever has or can. I will not rob the reader by quoting from the Primrose Sphinx. That gem of letters must ever stand together without subtraction of a word. It belongs to the realm of the lapidary, and its facets cannot be transferred. Yet, when Mr. Zangwill refers to the Mephistophelian curl of Lord Beaconsfield's lip, the word is used advisedly. No character in history so stands for the legendary Mephisto as does this man. The Satan of the Book of Job, jaunty, daring, joking with his maker, is the Mephisto of Goethe and all the other playwriters who have used the character. Mephisto is so much above the ordinary man in sense of humour, which is merely the right estimate of values, so sweeping in intellect that Milton pictures him as a dispossessed god, the only rival of deity. Disraeli, not satisfied with playing the part of Mephisto and tempting men to their ruin, but thirsting for a wider experience, turns Faustus himself and sells his soul for a price. He knows that everything in life is sold. Nothing is given gratis. We pay for knowledge with tears, for love with pain, for life with death. He haggles and barters with fate, and pays the penalty because he must. He alternately affronts and cajoles his enemies, takes all that the world has to give, knows every pleasure, wins every prize, makes love to the daughters of men, without loving them, and winning the one he selects, secretly thanks Jehovah, God of his fathers, that he leaves no offspring, because the woman fit for his mate and equal to mothering his children does not exist. The sublimity of his egotism stands unrivalled. It is so great that it is admirable. We lift our hats to this man. Napoleon gained the field without prejudice, but this man enters the list with hate and prejudice arrayed against him. He plays the pawns of chance with literature, religion, politics, and moves the Queen so as to checkmate all adversaries. He flouts love, but to show the world that he yet knows the ideal, he occasionally pictures truth and trusting affection in his speeches and books. This entire game of life is to him only a diversion. They may jeer him down in the House of Commons, but his patience is unruffled. He says, "Very well, I will wait." Now and again he smiles that wondrous, contagious smile, showing his white teeth and the depth of his dark, burning eyes. He knows his power. He revels in the wit he never expresses. He glories in this bright blade of the intellect that is never fully unsheathed. They think he is interested in English politics. Pish! Only world problems really interest him, and those that lie behind mean as much to him as those that are to come. He is one with eternity, and the vanquished glory of Rome, the marble beauty of Athens, the Assyrian Sphinx, the flight from Egypt under the leadership of one who had killed his man, yet had talked with God face to face, these and the dim uncertainty of the unseen are the things that interest him. He is a dreamer of the ghetto. There was no taint of mixed blood in the veins of Benjamin Disraeli. He traced his ancestry in a record that looks like a chapter from the book of Numbers. His forebears had known every persecution, every contumely, slight, and disgrace. Driven from Spain by the Inquisition, barely escaping with life, when Jewish blood actually fertilized the fields about Granada, his direct ancestor became one of the builders of Venice. The Jews practically controlled the trade of the world in the sun-kissed days of prosperity, when Venice produced the books and the art of Christendom. To trace an ancestry back to those who enthroned Venice on her 100 isles was surely something of which to be proud, and into the blood of Benjamin Disraeli went a dash of the gleam and glory and glamour of Venice, the Venice of the Doges. This man's grandfather came to England with a goodly fortune, which he managed to increase as the years went by. He had one son, Isaac, who nearly broke his parents' heart in that he not only showed no aptitude for business, but actually wrote poems wherein commerce was held up to ridicule. The tendency of the artistic nature to speak with disdain of the mere money-grabber, and the habit of the money-grabber to refer patronizingly to the helpless, theoretical and dreamy artist, is well known. Isaac Disraeli was an artist in feeling. He must have been a reincarnation of one of those bookmakers of Venice who touched hands with Titian and Giorgione and helped to invest wisely the moneys the merchants of the Rialto made. Never a Gratiano had a greater contempt for a merchant than he. Just to get him out of the way, his parents packed Isaac off to Europe, where he acquired several languages and some other things, with that ease which the Jew always manifests. He dallied in art, pecked at books, and made the acquaintance of many literary men. When his father died and left him a goodly fortune, he had the sense to turn the entire management of the estate over to his wife, a woman with a thorough business instinct, while he busied himself with his books. Benjamin was the second child of these parents. He had a sister older than himself and 2 brothers younger. Those philosophers who claim that spirits have their own individuality in the unseen world, and the accident of birth really does not constitute a kinship between brothers and sisters, will find here something that looks like proof. Benjamin Disraeli bore no resemblance in mental characteristics to his sister or brothers. He did, however, possess the mental virtues of both father and mother, multiplied by 10. When 12 years of age, he exhibited that intense disposition for mastery which was through life his distinguishing trait. The Jew does not outrank the Gentile in strength, but the average Jew surely does have the faculty of concentration which the average Gentile does not possess. And that is what constitutes strength, the ability to focus the mind on one thing and compass it. To concentrate is power. When Ben was sent to the Unitarian school at Walthamstow, aged 15, it was his first taste of school life. Up to this time his father had been his tutor. Now he found himself cast into that den of wild animals, an English school for boys. His Jewish name and features, and his dandy ways and attire, made him the instant butt of the playground. Ben very patiently surveyed his tormentors, waited to pick his man, and then challenged the biggest boy in the school to single combat. The exasperating way in which he coolly went about the business set his adversary's teeth chattering before the call of "Time!" The result of the fight was that, even if Dizzy was not thoroughly respected from that day forth, no one ever called "Old Clo, Old Clo" within his hearing. Of course, it was not generally advertised that the lad had been taking boxing lessons from Coster Joe for 3 years, with the villainies of a boys' school in view. In fact, boxing was this young man's diversion, and the Coster on several occasions expressed great regret that writing and politics had robbed the ring of one who showed promise of being the cleverest welterweight of his time. The main facts in both Vivian Grey and Contarini Fleming are autobiographical. Like Byron, upon whom Disraeli fed, the author never got far away from himself. It was not long before the intense personality of young Disraeli made itself felt throughout the Walthamstow school. The young man smiled at the pedant's idolatry of facts and seized the vital point in every lesson. He felt himself the superior of every one in the establishment, master included. And he was. Before a year, he split the school into 2 factions, those who favoured Ben Disraeli and those who were opposed to him. The master cast his vote with the latter class, and the result was that Ben withdrew, thus saving the authorities the trouble of expelling him. His leave-taking was made melodramatic with a speech to the boys, wherein impertinent allusions were made concerning all schoolmasters, and the master of Walthamstow in particular. And thus ended the school life of Benjamin Disraeli, the year at Walthamstow being his first and last experience. However, Ben was not indifferent to study. He felt sure that there was a great career before him, and he knew that knowledge was necessary to success. With his father's help, he laid out a course of work that kept him at his tasks 10 hours a day. His father was a literary man of acknowledged worth and mingled in the best artistic society of London. Into this society Benjamin was introduced, meeting all his father's acquaintances on an absolute equality. The young man at 18 was totally unabashed in any company. He gave his opinion unasked, criticised his elders, flashed his wit upon the guests, and was looked upon with fear, amusement, or admiration, as the case might be. Froude said of him, "The stripling was the same person as the statesman at 70, with this difference only, that the affectation which was natural in the boy was itself affected in the matured politician, whom it served well for a mask, or as a suit of impenetrable armour." That literature is the child of parents is true. That is to say, it takes 2 to produce a book. Of course there are imitation books, sort of wax figures that look like books, made through habit by those that have been many years upon the turf, and who work automatically. But every real, live, throbbing, pulsing book was written by a man with a woman at his elbow, or vice versa. When 21 years of age, Benjamin Disraeli produced Vivian Grey. The woman in the case was Mrs. Austen, wife of a prosperous London solicitor. This lady was handsome, a brilliant talker, a fine musician, and an amateur artist of no mean ability. She was much older than Disraeli. She must have been in order to comprehend that the young man's frivolity was pretence, and his foppery affectation. A girl of his own age, whose heart depths had not been sounded by experience, would have fallen in love with the foppery, or else despised it, which is often the same thing. But Mrs. Austen, mature in years, with a decade of London seasons behind her, having met every possible kind of man Europe had to offer, discovered that the world did not know Ben Disraeli at all. She saw that the youth did not reveal his true self, and that instead of courting society for its own sake, he had a supreme contempt for it. She intuitively knew that he was seething in discontent, and with prophetic vision she knew that his restless power and his ambition would yet make him a marked figure in the world of letters or politics, or both. For love as a passion, or supreme sentiment, ruling one's life, Disraeli had no sympathy. He shunned love for fear it might bind him hand and foot. Love not only is blind, but love blinds its votary, and Disraeli, knowing this, fled for freedom when the trail grew warm. A man madly in love is led, subdued. Imagine Mephisto captured, crying it out on his knees with his head in a woman's lap. But Mrs. Austen was happily married, the mother of a family, and occupied a position high in London society. Marriage with her was out of the question, and scandal and indiscretion equally so. Ben Disraeli felt safe with Mrs. Austen. With her he put off his domino and grew simple and confidential. And so the lady, doubtless a bit flattered, for she was a woman, set herself to push on the hazard of new fortunes. She encouraged him to write his novel of Vivian Grey, discussed every phase of it, read chapter after chapter as they were produced, and by her gentle encouragement and warm sympathy fired the mind of the young man to the point of production. The book is absurd in plot, and like most first books, flashy and overdrawn. And yet there is a deal of power in it, and the thinly veiled characters were speedily pointed out as living personages. Literary London went agog, and Mrs. Austen fanned the flame by inviting the set to her drawing-room to hear the great author read from his amusing work. The best feature of the book, and probably the saving feature, is that the central figure in the plot is Disraeli himself, and upon his own head the author plays his shafts of wit and ridicule. The impertinence and impudence which he himself manifested were parodied, caricatured, and played upon, to the great delight of the uninitiated rabble, who gave themselves much credit for having made a discovery. The man who scorns, scoffs, jibes and jeers other men, and at the same time is willing to drop his guard and laugh at himself, is not a bad man. Very, very seldom is found a man under 30 who does not take himself and all his wit seriously. But Disraeli, the lawyer's clerk, at 20, was wise and subtle beyond all men in London town. Mrs. Austen must have been wise too, for had she been like most other good women, she would have wanted her protégé admired, and have rebelled in tears at the thought of placing him in a position where society would serve him up for tittle-tattle. Small men can be laughed down, but great ones, never. A little American testimony as to the appearance of Disraeli in his manhood might not here be amiss. Says N.P. Willis, "He was sitting in a window looking on Hyde Park, the last rays of sunlight reflected from the gorgeous gold flowers of a splendidly embroidered waistcoat, patent leather pumps, a white stick with a black cord and tassel, and a quantity of chains about his neck and pockets served to make him a conspicuous object. He has one of the most remarkable faces I ever saw. He is lividly pale, and but for the energy of his action and strength of his lungs, would seem to be a victim of consumption. His eye is black as Erebus, and has the most mocking, lying-in-wait sort of expression conceivable. His mouth is alive with a kind of working and impatient nervousness, and when he has burst forth, as he does constantly, with a particularly successful cataract of expression, it assumes a curl of triumphant scorn that would be worthy of Mephistopheles. His hair is as extraordinary as his taste in waistcoats, A thick, heavy mass of jet-black ringlets falls on his left cheek almost to his collarless stock, which on the right temple is parted and put away with the smooth carefulness of a girl. The conversation turned on Beckford. I might as well attempt to gather up the foam of the sea as to convey an idea of the extraordinary language in which he clothed his description. He talked like a racehorse approaching the winning post, every muscle in action. Disraeli, like Byron, awoke one morning and found himself famous. And like Byron, he was yet a stripling. Pitt was Prime Minister at 25. Genius has its example, and Disraeli worshipped alternately at the shrines of Byron and Pitt. The daring intellect and haughty indifference of Byron, and the compelling power of Pitt, he saw no reason why he should not unite these qualities within himself. He had been grubbing in a lawyer's office, and had revealed decided ability in a business way, but novel writing in office hours was not appreciated by his employer. Ben was told so, and this gave him an opportunity to resign. He had set his heart on a political career. He thirsted for power, and no doubt Mrs. Austen encouraged him in this. To push a man to the front and thus win a vicarious triumph has been a source of great joy to more than one ambitious woman. To get on in politics, Disraeli must enter the House of Commons. Even now, with the help of the Austens and his father's purse, a pocket borough might be secured, but it was not enough. He must enter with éclat. A year of travel was advised. Fame grows best where the man is not too much in evidence. There is virtue in obscurity. Disraeli decided to go down through Europe, travelling over the same route that Byron had taken, write another book that would secure him some more necessary notoriety, and then stand for a seat in the House of Commons. Once within the sacred pale, he believed his knowledge of business, his ability to express himself as a writer or speaker, and the magic of his presence would make the rest easy. There was no dumb luck in the matter. Neither father nor son believed in chance. They fixed their faith on cause and effect. And so Ben went abroad before London society grew aweary of him. His stay was purposely prolonged, and news of his progress from time to time filled the public prints. He carried letters of introduction to everyone, and moved in a sort of sublime pageant as he travelled. When he returned, wearing the costume of the East, he was greeted by society as a prince. His novel, Contarini Fleming, was published with great acclaim, and interest in Vivian Grey was revived by a special edition deluxe. Contarini was compared to Childe Harold, and pictures of Disraeli, with hair curling to his shoulders, were displayed in shop windows by the side of pictures of Byron. Disraeli was the lion of the drawing-rooms. When it was known he was to be in a certain place, crowds gathered to get a glimpse of his handsome face and to listen to his wit. He introduced several of his Eastern accomplishments, one of which was the hookah. "Beware of tobacco, my boy," said an old colonel to him one day. "Women do not like it. It has ruined more charming liaisons than anything else I know." "Then you must consider smoking a highly moral accomplishment," was the reply. The colonel had wrongly guessed the object of Disraeli's ambition. He became acquainted with Tom Moore, Count d'Orsay, and Lady Morgan. Lady Blessington welcomed him at Kensington. Buller Lytton introduced him to Mrs. Wyndham Lewis, wife of the member from Maidstone, aged 40, and he was, say, 25. They tried conclusions in repartee, sparred for points, and amused the company by hot arguments and wordy pyrotechnics. When they found themselves alone in the conservatory, after a little stroll, they shook hands, and the gentleman said, "What fools these mortals be!" "True," replied the lady, "true, and you and I are mortals." And so Disraeli found another woman who correctly gauged him. They liked each other first rate. At last a vacant borough was found, and arrangements made for the young man to stand as a candidate for the House of Commons. The campaign was entered upon with great vigour. Disraeli quite outdid himself in speech-making and waistcoats. The election took place, and he was defeated. End of section 18.